I don't really believe in use the bounce. I think that if you try to use the bounce, I just see so many problems with the leading edge gets lifted up and people end up thinning it.
Years ago, I went to the Butch Harmon School of Golf and took lessons on chipping because it got so bad. Despite these lessons, I didn't really get better. Yes, I know you can hit far behind the ball and use the ground as a safety net, but I still wasn't very good at chipping. I also wondered how the best chipper of all time, arguably at least, Phil Mickelson, swears by using the leading edge, as does Jordan Spieth, rather than using the bounce on the golf club.
The first is you have to have your weight forward. That helps keep the leading edge down.
In addition to Phil and Jordan Spieth, you've got Joseph Mayo, the coach of Viktor Hovland, and his concept of spin loft, which has taken Viktor Hovland from one of the worst chippers of all time to one of the best on the PGA Tour right now. I knew there was only one man to turn to, Brendon DeVore of Be Better Golf, to see if I should use the bounce or the leading edge. Are you a Parker McLachlin use the bounce short game guy now, or are you more of a Joseph Mayo, Viktor Hovland's coach, steep angle of attack, leading edge, Phil Mickelson, Jordan Spieth type guy? Because if we break it down on a smaller level, not focusing on the big swing or overall, those are two different schools of thought on how to do short game shots.
Well, I've interviewed Parker and I talked to Parker a lot. And then I've interacted just a little bit with Joseph Mayo, who doesn't do videos, except for if he's just doing it for his Patreon. I don't really see those two camps as like the dialectic or like the AB so much anymore. So what I'll say is like the two guys right now that I think that are the real choices for golfers is like when you just talk about use the bounce, because that's a different issue from use the bounce to whether or not of how steep to be. I think personally, from talking to Tim Yelverton,
like I said, I want today to be very open-ended,
and talking to Parker and talking to Barry Henson recently, a tour player who's got a great short game, I think you should be as shallow as the lie will allow you. I do agree with the common thing that a lot of people are saying is if the ball's on the ground, right, and you want to give yourself the best chance of hitting a good chip, I don't think steep is like really that great of a solution. I'd have to talk more to Joseph Mayo about what that is, and I think a lot of the science agrees with that. The best analogy for this I think you can give is Tim Yelverton told me it's kind of like landing a plane. If the runway is really good, and let's say we're on a good Las Vegas, manicured fairway lie, which I think is where everybody should be doing 90% of their practicing, get that really good and then go into the rough and vary it. But you should be able about 8 or 9 times out of 10 to hit a really good shot off a fairway lie. And if that's the runway, you want to land the plane, a plan lanes at about 6 degrees or something like that. And I think that's similar to what you want to land your wedge at. Because if you go like this and imagine like a V, this is what Joseph Mayo has to contend with all the time. This is admittedly the classic thing that people say about chipping. But if you think about chipping and you go like this and your landing angle is like that, it's not that. But just for example, the moment that it is touching the ground is like really brief. So if the ball is here where my chin is, and you happen to do there, now you're fat as heck. And then if you hit it there, you're perfect. And now you're a quarter inch over that way. Now you've thinned it or you've low grooved it or something. Whereas so when I'm teaching kids or my son or whatever, you really don't want to think about a V bottom. You want to think much more about like a U bottom like that. Now, if we go where my chin is again, just a good thing. Now, if I hit it there, which would have been fat and like gone about 3 feet with the V bottom, now I've hit a pretty good chip. And here I've hit it perfect. And there it's a little thin, but it's a pretty good chip. And I think that's what Matt Kuchar's saying. That's what Parker's saying is that you want to give the player a lot of options of how to hit it. Now, I don't, but that's attack angle like that. And that's just my personal opinion. Could be wrong, but that's what I've seen work. Now, when it comes to use the bounce, I think the best voice in this that I've interviewed is Dr. Rob Neal, who does Wedgecraft.
Hey guys, thanks for watching. All right, real quick thing with Dr. Rob Neal, who is a biomechanic, that you said to effectively shallow the club, the handle needs to be raising through impact. It was something like that. So talk about why that needs, the handle needs to raise, and then also, does that also happen in like, say like a full 7?
Yeah, I mean, it happens, like if you go and look at full swing mechanics, the handle will start raising by about the right thigh if you're looking at a face-on video.
With Lane Savoy, and they've put together like all kinds of biomechanics and science about what's happening in wedge shots anywhere from like 50 yards and in. And what they say is like, they're basically, I don't really believe in use the bounce. I think that if you try to use the bounce, I just see so many problems with the leading edge gets lifted up and people end up thinning it like so often. And not only do they thin it, but when they think use the bounce, activate that back edge of the bounce, they end up flipping it too. And they're casting it. And in almost every shot of golf, 99% of shots of golf, the handle should be leading the club head. Really rare for have this pass. So it's almost like a little bit of a lag impact, just like Bertie Cordell would say, or others, but it's in the wedge swing. So what I think you should do is you should have quite a bit of shaft lean, maybe like 15 degrees of shaft lean, but then a very shallow angle of attack. And that way you get the grooves of the ball. And then it doesn't matter if you have 1 degree of bounce, if you have 12 degrees of bounce, you get the grooves on the ball first, but you're coming in so shallow because you're leading it. It won't work if you like try to flip at it. Use the bounce becomes pretty limited. And I think a lot of tour players advocate this because of some of the agronomy they have on tour is like so good. And like use the bounce works amazing when you go out to Palm Springs or like some of these like golf mecca places that like have everything to make it perfect, because you slide into it and you're kind of hitting it fat on purpose. Parker calls it like a drop kick, and that works like really well there. But leading, like I think rather than use the bounce, I would use the leading edge and just have a very shallow angle of attack. And you know, like I do these singularities. I've talked to so many different coaches, and one of the singularities, especially with short game, comes to one hand only chipping. Nobody really seems to know why, but almost every player, when they're struggling and having a hard time, they're going to one hand chipping. And we're seeing Austin Truslow, who's on the PGA Tour and Korn Ferry Tour. He chips right hand only exclusively. Whenever he's inside 30 yards, he's only with one hand. And John Daly famously, every warm up, he does left hand only. So I would say 80% of the coaches are doing right hand only for chipping, and that's what I would advocate people to do. But you don't get quite the stability and the precision that you need. Your impact is better, but then you might not get the perfect distance control that you would need. So go try. What I recommend people to do is do it right hand only and film yourself doing it and see how is that different. Not a lot of people are going to make a V bottom if they're only holding it with one hand. And so I think let that be something that kind of drives your own like personal instruction, is do it right hand only, see how it feels. Also, the great tip that I got from Parker McLachlin is probably the drill that he does with 95% of the people he sees, certainly amateurs, is do a freezer where you go to the top, you wait for a good little while. Like don't go to the top and come down like beyond Matsuyama. You go to the top, wait, and then you hit it.
Freezers.
And if you can get good impact there, and then you can see that the ball went the right distance, that I think is the real key to short game. So short game is angle of attack, shaft lean, and then with the face angle. But then also like tempo is probably the number one reason why people would develop a short game yip or a chipping yip or even a putting yip. If you take the club back to here and you only want to hit it 15 yards, you're going to have to do something to slow down into it. And if I take it back here only to here and I want it to go 15 yards, I'm going to have to do something like, really race up on it. So if you take it back, you pause, and then you hit it, and it goes the right distance, you're really, that's why Cam Smith and in putting, and then other people in chipping will say, like, you really are hitting it with your backswing, meaning I take it to this distance, and then I just let it flow, and then that's the distance you go. If you had to, on the way down, you had to take something off of it, or you had to zip something up on it to make it go the right distance, that's where we start to see things like really break down, and people have these huge problems with chipping, like so bad that they would like want to quit golf. So do that, and if it gets really bad, just like try it with your eyes closed. So go over to Be Better Golf on YouTube and click the subscribe button. It really helps the channel. If you're watching this video, more important than that, if you're watching this video and that subscribe button is not clicked already, do us a favor and click the Big Boy Pants subscribe button. It means 1 second of your time, but it means like the world to us if you did that.
Folks, Brendon is so close to 150K. This guy is one of my biggest inspirations for starting a YouTube channel. Thank you so much. The people of Asia salute you.